Hello everyone. In this video, we'll use the multimodal transcription conventions to transcribe embodied actions by two different participants. So looking again at our video, we're going to transcribe this time a handshake by Trump and the owner of the McDonald's. I'll play the segment now.
Good job, thank you very much. How long have you had it?
This location, about a year. I've been an operator for 12 years.
Okay, so with this action, we want to represent the phases. So extending out a hand, the shake, and then the release or the retraction. So for Trump, we already have a symbol that we've used to represent his manual actions, his manual gestures. So even though a handshake is not necessarily the same as a pointing gesture, we can use the same symbol if we're conceptualizing this as a symbol that represents all of the manual gestures and all of the manual actions that are produced by Trump. So we have a symbol for his actions. We don't have one for the owner yet, but we will add one in, a distinct symbol, because he is a different participant. We'll add one in when we get to that point. The first step, again, is to identify the beginning of this. Where does he start to extend his hand? There it is. Then we go backwards looking for the first frame at which that movement becomes recognizable.
Good job, thank you. Good job, thank you. Good job, thank you.
Okay, good job, thank you. We're going to put the plus symbol for Trump, fix the overlap alignment. Now here is a convention that we need to be mindful of. We keep the overlapping talk together on adjacent lines. So we don't put the multimodal transcription of Trump's manual action on the line directly below his speech. We put it below the overlap. And when we do this, we now need to identify the speaker label. And we use lowercase letters to represent embodied actions and not capital letters. So we could describe it as reaches out or extends hand. Maybe extends hand would be better. And we use the arrow again, indicating this is continuing on to another line. We're going to look for where that extension of the hand action ends. So I'm not transcribing, I'm not making a distinction in this transcript between the preparation and the hold. You could do that. You could use the conventions to represent those distinct phases. And if you were doing a multimodal analysis of handshakes and the temporal coordination of handshakes, that would be really important to capture that detail. But for now, I'm not going to do that. I'm representing this just as a extending hand, and I'm interested to see where does the shake begin. So we put it here, the hands are touching, so that is a reasonable place to indicate where the shaking would begin.
Thank you. How long have you had it?
How long have you had it?
Thank you. How long have you had it?
Now, I can tell that there's a little bit of silence there, so we need to zoom in. So this is another important convention. The movement from the extending hand to the shaking action occurs right in the middle of this 0.3 second silence. So we need to subdivide that silence to provide a location for us to insert our boundary. And so I'm going to break this up into a 0.1 and a 0.2, and then I'm going to put the boundary marker in the middle of that, just like this. And then I'm going to put a speaker label because the line above, although Trump is there, the most recent speaker, but the line above is a silence, not speech. So I'm going to put the speaker label there. The arrow, again, is indicating that the action continues the extending hand action continues until this point in the transcript. And then it turns into what we're going to call shaking. So let's see when the shaking ends. Now again, we see that there's a hold of the hand there. I'm not going to represent that in this transcript, but again, if this was important analytically, you would want to represent that. There's the release. So, okay. I'm going to go up to that point.
Dislocation about a year. I've been an
Let's listen again. Okay. The owner says, I've been an op, and he says, oh, good. So I'm going to put the symbol into here. All right, so the Trump's handshaking action continues on to this point, and then I'll represent what he does as a release. Now, here's another convention. If this releasing action occurs, continues on past the end of the transcript, you can use this double arrow to indicate that. So this would say that the releasing action, maybe we call it release and return, continues on beyond the end of the transcript. Let's see if that's actually true.
operator for 12 minutes. Operator for 12 minutes.
Okay, it's not true in this case. So let's fix that. Let's look for when his hand returns to a rest position. Okay. I would put it about there. Okay, it's as he is doing the sound stretch on the word for. Also, I will put it here. Okay. So we've transcribed Trump's side of the handshake now. But we need to go in and add the owners. And typically that's the way that I do things. I'll go one participant at a time. I'll also go one embodied action at a time, or throughout a transcript, one multimodal resource at a time, because it's much easier to do it that way. And if you try to do many different actions and many different participants in a kind of line by line way, it makes the process more difficult. So now we want to transcribe the owner's side of the handshake. So we'll look in the video to see where we can see his hand first extended out. We can see it there. You can see his finger down in the bottom corner of the video. So we're going to find the exact first frame where that becomes visible. There it is. I'm going to play it to see where that occurs in the transcript.
How long have you? How long have you?
Okay, so it's after the word you. Now we need to pick a symbol to represent the owner's manual actions. We can't use the same symbol that we used for Trump's manual actions. We need a new symbol. I'm going to use the asterisk. We then insert, as we've done before, another asterisk symbol. Because the line above is not speech by the owner, but is instead Trump, we need to indicate the speaker label. We're using lowercase letters to represent the embodied actions here, and we use capital letters to represent the speech. So we now have the start time for the hand extending. And we know this continues on for a bit, so we're going to use the arrow to represent that it continues on to another line of the transcript. So we now need to see, where does the shaking action begin? Now, due to the nature of this action and the way that we are transcribing it, it's simultaneous with the shaking action that we transcribed before for Trump. So that means we're going to put the boundary for the owner, his action, at the same location. So we can insert it in here. And it wouldn't matter which side you put it on. Now, because the line above is trump, we need to put the owner. And we're putting in some spaces. We need an arrow to connect that to the previous line. And in this kind of a transcript, the things don't quite line up, and you can choose to line up the symbols like this, following very strictly the convention to always align the symbols, or you could decide to override that convention and prefer rather to have them aligned like this, the words, because there's no meaningful distinction between the placement of those two symbols because the timing is exact. We're not claiming that one occurred before the other. If we were claiming that, then we would need to subdivide that time and show that through the position of the boundaries relative to measured units of time. So now we want to see where does the release occur. And again, because of the nature of this action, they're both happening at the same time. So we're going to now put our symbol here. I'm labeling this line, but not the line above, because the line above, when we transcribe Trump's release, it was his speech on the line above, so you can infer that we've transcribed his embodied action. But that's not the case for the owner, so we need to represent that explicitly. And now we want to see how far this goes. Okay, we can only see it up until that point.
Been an operator. Been an operator. Been an operator. Been an operator.
Okay, so operator. Now I'm going to add some spaces here to make this line up. Now you have a choice. You can use a shorter description here for the release so that they line up, or you can change the transcription of the speech to make them line up. So there are different options for how you want to do this. I think I will, in this case, just extend the lettering of the words, to put some spaces in there. So something we haven't discussed so far is the fact that we cannot actually see the full duration of his actions. And ideally, we should have some way to represent that. The transcription conventions by Mondada don't explicitly have a convention for this purpose, but we can co-opt one. So for example, we could use the double arrow symbol to indicate that this releasing action continues beyond where we have transcribed. This is a convention that's normally used at the beginning or the end of a transcript to indicate that we are jumping into the action kind of midway through. But we can kind of adapt it for this use to indicate that this releasing action, it stops here, but actually it's continuing on in the transcript, but we cannot quite see it. So if this was an important part of your analysis, if you were doing a study of the timing of retractions and handshakes, or the temporal coordination of hands and handshakes, and this piece of data was an important one that you were going to put into a paper, you would want to explain your use of this convention and make sure that what you can see in terms of the temporal coordination is satisfactory for supporting whatever analysis you might have of it. Now let's introduce this convention here as well, so we can use these arrows to indicate actually that the extending of the hand is beginning before the point at which we've transcribed it. And so that's a way to indicate this kind of difficult aspect of using media data for multimodal transcription. All right, there we have a transcription of two participants, embodied actions. The main point to keep in mind, we need to use different symbols for the multimodal resource for each participant. So a manual action by Trump can't share the same symbol as a manual action by the owner. And also the most efficient technique, in my opinion, to transcribe multiple actions by multiple participants is to go one at a time through them. So go through Trump's part of the handshake, then go back through the owner's part of the handshake. I will briefly show you here how to format this part of the transcript. I'll just do part of it, not the whole thing. So again, the lines of speech need to be put into bold. All of the traditional Jeffersonian transcription lines are put into bold. And the multimodal transcription lines are put into light gray. And one here as well. And then in numbering the transcripts, we would number the lines in bold, and we would not put a line number for the multimodal transcription lines in gray. So that is it. Video on how to transcribe multiple embodied actions by multiple participants. I hope you find it useful.